Long hours and demanding pace took its toll on American workers. With little interference from state and federal government, employers worked their laborers relentlessly. The industry standard was a 10-hour day, 6 days a week, although workers in some industries, such as steel, usually worked 12-hour shifts. Without safety regulations enforced by state or federal government, American industry was a cauldron of fatigue, illness, death, injury, and despair. A meal spinner in a Fall River, Massachusetts textile mill estimated that he walked as many as 30 miles a day to tend his machines. Exhausted and working among dangerous machines, textile workers regularly lost fingers. Those who did not suffer injury died years later from brown lung from inhaling fibers in the factory air. Likewise, coal miners expired from black lung after years of breathing in coal dust. American railroaders and coal miners died at 3 times the rate of their European counterparts, who enjoyed at least some government safety regulations of the workplace. The steel industry was notoriously dangerous, with blast furnaces and exposed molten steel in the open hearth. By one estimate, 25% of immigrant men working the Pennsylvania steel industry's most dangerous jobs were killed or seriously disabled. Death or injury spelled disaster for working families. With no safety net, such as unemployment, working men's compensation, or health benefits, working families regularly found themselves homeless and hungry overnight. In addition to the ever-present threat of injury or death, working families were especially vulnerable to economic cycles of boom and bust. Although the economy grew enormously overall in the last quarter of the 19th century, it did so by fits and starts. Work hours fluctuated from feast to famine, from overtime hours to sudden unemployment. Two severe and prolonged economic depressions, only 20 years apart, one from 1873 to 1878 and the other from 1893 to 1897, affected the U.S. and all industrialized nations worldwide. Unregulated markets and rampant speculation and complicated, often incomprehensible financial instruments led to these upheavals, leaving millions without work. Those who managed to keep their jobs faced both shortened hours and wage cuts. The Wall Street crash of 1873, precipitated by the failure of Jay Cooke and Company, the nation's largest investment bank, resulted in tens of thousands of business failures, 6,000 alone in 1874, and as many as 900 a month in 1878. An article in Harper's Weekly in the winter of 1873 reported hundreds of deaths by starvation and 3,000 babies abandoned on doorsteps. In 1893, another Wall Street panic helped spawn a second lengthy worldwide depression even more severe than the depression of the 1870s. The winter of 1893-1894 was especially harsh, with widespread suffering from lack of food, fuel, and housing. With worsening working conditions, along with the severe economic convulsions of the Gilded Age and the hardships they left in their wake, workers began to organize collectively into labor unions to fight for a living wage, shorter hours, and better working conditions, and to offset the power of employers. They framed their battle as a fight for American values. Workers crafted a range of strategies for collective action in an attempt to offset the enormous power of industrialists. While some labor unions tried to organize all workers, others attempted to maximize their power by allowing only white, skilled workers to join. Still others insisted that workers would have more clout by organizing along industrial lines, in which strikes would bring entire industries to a standstill. Conflict between workers and employees exploded. Between 1881 and 1905, 37,000 strikes involving 7 million workers took place. Many of these were violent. Even farmers, who were squeezed by banks, railroads, and middlemen, organized collectively to try to better their condition. But fears of communism, socialism, and anarchism, all of which aim to dismantle the capitalist system, placed the judicial system overwhelmingly on the side of employers. In the name of social order and individual rights, courts condemned labor activity. While judges rarely outlawed strikes, they frequently invoked injunctions to restrict strike activity. Although socialists, anarchists, and communists made up only a very small percentage of the American labor movement, unions would subsequently be branded as threatening, revolutionary, and un-American organizations bent on fomenting class warfare.